Ladies and gentlemen, let that be your welcome. Welcome back to the Midgar Minute, where today we are finally going to cover the finale of the highly acclaimed,
and will be even further acclaimed after this episode.
Oh yes,
it'll reach new heights.
Reaching new heights for Japanese flip phone mobile games. But there are two very, very, very amazing entities for which, if not for them, this show would not be possible. And for starters, one of them is you, Chris, my co-host. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing all right, Nick. Thank you so much for asking.
Dude, we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm definitely excited for it. But before we move forward, that second entity would be none other than... Chris, do you remember?
You would think after 100 episodes I would. Oh, right. Yes. The Mosey Gang.
The Mosey Gang.
The Mosey Movers.
The Mosey Movers, who donate as little as $1 a month to keep our nonsense moving. Honestly, we really couldn't do it without them. It's been such an amazing ride, and it was so great having a few of them on for the episode 100 that we just did. But without further ado, shout out to these amazing humans: Scott, Kyle, AJ, Danny, Kevin, Jill, Brianne, Matt, Sam, Charlotte, Cameron, Garrett, Dan M, Ryan, Petros, Matt M, Tyos48, and Colton. You guys are awesome, man. Thanks for everything
thank you
do.
guys.
We're going to work hard to make sure that your gill is worth it. But before we get into today's exciting episode, it is worth noting that we are actually going to be bringing this podcast over to YouTube. As you all know, we've been scattered across every audio platform you can imagine. But starting now, we're going to start uploading episodes to YouTube, starting with episode 101. And over time, we will make the backlog available on the channel. But for right now, we're really just going to pick it up from 101. So please feel free to find us on YouTube. Give us a subscription. We're going to start putting our episodes up there.
And if anyone who is listening to this episode on YouTube or finding it on YouTube for the first time, and you're wondering, man, where are the other 100 episodes of this podcast? We are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other places wherever podcasts are sold.
And all the episodes are there.
Yeah, and then I guess to do some other quick little housekeeping, we are going to be, I don't know, should we talk about schedule? I think it's good.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. You can expect bi-weekly episodes.
We're moving to a bi-weekly format. So we're expecting an episode on the first and third week of every month, and on the last week of every month, we are doing a dedicated game night, which I know we talk about all the time with the Mosey Gang. And so we will always have a dedicated game night at least once a month. So yeah, if that interests you, you know all the stuff, you're going to hear it. We're going to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I guess with that out of the way, let's get into it.
Chris, we got quite a finale here.
So
I almost don't know where to begin. Maybe you can jump in.
We can. I guess we can start where, because maybe we'll give everyone a little bit of refresher, because it's been, if you've been listening to these episodes in real time, it's been a little bit since we talked about where we left off last time. The amazing cliffhanger, where Sung has killed, seemingly, Verdot and Felicia. And it was really abrupt, and was like, this game has had some of those good cliffhangers in between each chapter, but yeah, that one really just sort of was like, oh, okay, like this is the climax, this is it. And I'm like, oh my god, what's it like? The stakes are high, expectations are slightly above that. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go in. And then I was like, we had all the other remakes, the Rebirth news and stuff come out.
We have a new apocalyptic villain.
Yes,
Zirkinade.
Yes, Zeta
Let's just assume that's right. Let's just assume that's right.
And he has been summoned, or like I'm not sure if they left off last time where if he was fully summoned or he was in the process of being summoned.
I do believe he's fully summoned.
The boy be here. But we start
Here.
this chapter 24, which I think has probably I haven't really been paying attention, admittedly, to a lot of the titles of the chapters, but this one being Limit Breaking Concerto, I think I'm like, okay, that's pretty fucking hype.
I like that.
And and so we are going to begin our assault on Zirconade, and first I guess we sort of get the aftermath of Sung and the rest of the Turks, and after Verdot and Felicia were shot, and it was very much like, hey, we see Reno on all fours on the ground being like, what the fuck, and they're both him and Rude are being like, hey, Sung, was that for real? And my expectation of this was like, no, it probably wasn't. Like, that was going to be my sort of take of like, okay, they're going to make it seem like they killed him and Elfie/Felicia.
Well, just because it just seems so out of character for the Sung we saw in this game.
Right. And everything
right?
like he will do what he has.
Just gonna shoot them
yeah,
down.
he will do what he has to do, but you know, he cares about Verdot and the Turks to a fault, right? So it's like, even if he would do it, like, he would find some way to where he could be like, all right, can we prove our worth and also not have to kill my boss/father figure, kind of, sort of.
I mean, I would even go so far as to say mentor.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
more like a mentor figure to Sung.
Yeah, and all that. And then, you know, Sung plays it off as like, yep, what's done is done. I had to do it.
He plays it off like a Turk.
Yeah, nice and cool and suave. But then we don't really hang on that for too long, as Reno and Rude did not. Sung does ride back to headquarters and is like, yeah, I'm out of here. And also worth mentioning that the bodies of Verdot and Elfie are in the back of this truck where he's also going to be. So I'm like, all right, maybe they're building up something, right? Where they're like, okay, he's going to like knock out the guards driving the car and be like, oh, see, it was a big old joke. We got him. But yeah, and we'll see. We'll get there eventually. But with all that stuff out of the way, we rejoin Shotgun on her journey, her ascension to the heavens of Zirconade.
Well, I wanna reiterate and maybe just like paint a little word picture here. So Shotgun got transported to what looks to be a very ethereal place. And it bears, and I said this in the last episode,
very much like
this,
the Northern
that was
Crater.
So long ago. I wouldn't even go so far as to say the Northern Crater. I mean, it definitely bears some resemblance, but to me, it looks more like the Singularity chapter in Remake, with those sort of like scattered pieces on the floor.
Yeah, the floor's made out of
green
chunky
maka-ish in
pixels.
the air. Yeah, stuff like that. So it's very interesting to me that the Before Crisis final level aesthetic looks most similar to Remake.
Yeah, it is kind of funny, and also, it just reminded me a lot of the Northern Crater stage in Smash Brothers Ultimate when Sephiroth came out. It kind of had also that,
I see that.
Like, oh, the land is forming beneath you, sort of in these cubes, of dirt and stone.
Mm-hmm.
Very much has like a very end of JRPG area look to it. It gives off that ethereal, ethereal vibe. And it's, as like final game areas, pretty good. I would rate it good. I mean, I like green as a color, so, and there's a lot of green, so I'm like, hey, yeah, that's good. But yeah, we do
got green. It'll
a little green, maybe some teal in there. But Shotgun begins her final gauntlet before fighting the big boss man, and there's like these weird like black bug creatures, and there's this section, I guess, that you can sort of avoid most of them because they're coming in and out of their puddles in the ground. It's very strange. Again, technical limitations and all that. Shotgun is taking her assault through the final gauntlet leading up to the boss, and But first, we have, of course, like a mini sub boss, and it's a bunch of French fries. No, it looks like a bunch of French fries wrapped in like a gimp outfit. It's very weird looking. It's a bunch of crystals, but when I first watched it, that's what I first thought of. And I think it's let me get the actual name of the enemy here, because we have to keep.
And
it,
I just want to make
here.
note. We will get into it more, especially once we get up to the last boss. But for those who are curious at all about gameplay, the fights and the combat in this last leg of the game honestly looks like a whole different game at this point.
It's I was literally just about to say.
Same mechanics, but such an obvious application of strategy. And
Like
not
this-
get out of the way of the bullet, shoot the bullet. Get out of the way, shoot. Like it looks really good. It looks really
I mean, and to be fair, the gameplay that we have been watching up until this point, most of the fights have been shotgun just blasting someone with their shotgun and the fight's over.
Especially because whoever we're watching is on a new game plus where shotguns
it's like
maxed
super
out.
like over leveled. So with this Zirconic Guard is the name of this enemy, and it kind of turns into like a Nier Automata fight. like weird like bullet hell sort of thing, where I mean it's not anything super extravagant, but I guess in terms of this game and the other fights, like it is kind of like, oh yeah, this is interesting. Like the enemy has like a very interesting sort of attack pattern where it just like shoots these kind of shoot 'em up balls out of itself, and then it spins around. I'm like, okay, in like an actual action game scenario, this fight would actually be really cool. And I think if people, well, I honestly think it just reminds me of Nier Automata. So if you want this experience.
Well, I will say, we talked about this a little bit too, is like, I'm excited to see what they do with Ever Crisis as far as Before Crisis goes. I wonder what this gameplay segment is going to look like through Ever Crisis.
Yeah, because is Ever Crisis going to be, my interpretation of what it is that all, like, no matter what game story you're playing, it's going to be that same sort of turn-based,
yes,
a hot cooldown system, right? Like you have a bunch of special attacks on cooldown, or at least that's from that little bit of gameplay that we saw. That's what it kind of looked like. It's like, all right, you have your regular automatic attacks that you probably do by tapping on the dude or whatever, and then you have like, braver and whatever, other special, if you have materia and stuff too. I'm sure that's how that will work as well. But yeah, I wonder, for a more cinematic-esque fight, like, would it be any different? And I guess when you think that Ever Crisis will itself be a phone
honestly,
game,
I just want to say, Square Enix made this way too hard on themselves. It just occurred to me now, this could have just been a turn-based game. Because selecting things on a menu during combat on a flip phone is probably so much easier than running around and shooting.
It could have been fucking Mega Man Battle Network. Oh. You're just moving on a grid, you know? And like it could be more active where you're, you can dodge out of attacks and things like that, maybe.
You hear that, Square
knock
Enix?
Enemies into other, You
hear that? You guys need another flip phone game developed. You don't do it without going through us.
Yeah. If you ever think about making another flip phone game, you better consult us first.
Call me, dude.
We'll be waiting. I'll keep my phone off silent from now on. But yeah, I mean, I think this fight again is very much a sort of like, I can see like where they wanted to go with this, but just with what they had, like they try. I mean, this is a very unique fight in that like most of the other enemies just kind of like. If they are, melee enemies, they kind of just move on top of you and like shake around and numbers start flying everywhere. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how most of the fights go. But like with this, it's like, okay, there's an actual sort of rhythm to the fight. There's a pattern that the boss has. I mean, it's very simple, but if this was like a straight up action game, this fight would be really fun. And it's like, man, I really wish that maybe this game does get a full remake at some point, because I feel like I see things like this and I'm like, man, I feel like it might deserve it more than any of the other compilation stuff. I mean, not that hey, Dirge of Cerberus needs one too. It's kind of hard. Honestly, I would probably put, because at least Dirge is a competent game. Not to say that this game's incompetent, but it's barely a game before Crisis. It's basically like a it's a visual novel with like a little bit of stuff. It's not just. I mean, honestly, this game might have been better off as a as a visual novel, considering the limitations of the time. But I don't want to sound like I'm bashing the game or anything, because I think given what they had to work with, I think they did shockingly well. Like this game, you can go back and listen to the other episodes. There have been multiple times I can think of where I've been genuinely surprised by what this game is capable of doing. I mean, there's a lot of dumb stuff in it, but I think it shows a lot of potential and is like super, obvious that it is being held back just by being a Japanese flip phone game. And like if it could have another chance to be a real boy someday. I think
honestly, the best you're gonna get is this Ever Crisis take on it.
Yeah, probably, and that hey, that's fine.
That's
even
good
just
enough.
To have it, it's for me, it's really like just that the game is going to exist in a form that's not this. I think is definitely enough. At the very least, like I'll be happy. I'm happy that we're getting Ever Crisis at all, no matter what form it takes. Right? Hopefully, as long as it's not too aggressive with any sort of microtransaction stuff. But anyways, before our trademark going off topic, we defeat the evil French fries, the dominatrix French fry, near Automata boss. And then we go down what kind of reminds me a lot of I don't know what it's giving me, like Mortal Kombat vibes almost, going down this hallway it's like kind of the same like bricky sort of pathway that we were following before, but it's very dark and there's like green lightning bolts everywhere. I mean, Again, it's just a JPEG, but I'm I'm doing a lot of the heavy lifting in my mind, which I mean, as we'll get onto, that's what this game, I feel like you have to do a lot of the heavy lifting with your mind for this. But anyways, we finally make it to Zirconade, and in JRPG fashion, we are just sort of like in space? ? Like we're just in. It's like fighting.
Again, it's so strange to me, dude, how much this kind of resembles the end of Remake, where
it
we ended up in space, and it's like, did they just? Was this a Before Crisis ending? Is that what that was? Was the ending in the singularity the Before Crisis representation?
Yeah, we were in the Before Crisis
Remake?
universe.
Like we had the Dirge leg with Integrate and with the deep ground stuff when you see the people in like the little tubes. But this was the ending of Remake was just Before Crisis.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew? It's definitely feels like it's at very least inspired by it, and kind of makes me a little bit more interested in being like, oh, maybe they are going to reincorporate some of this stuff. Kind of like how, they reincorporated.
Well, we'll definitely, when we get towards the ending here, we'll have plenty to say about that.
Yeah. But honestly, what this reminded me the most of, and a game that I unfortunately never really got, I was never able to play myself, but Chrono Trigger, if anyone's ever played that, and you fight the big bad time boss at the end of that, you are also sort of like in this void, this space void, floating in the middle of nowhere, and there's a bunch of crazy shit going on. But I guess, I mean, I would like to comment on the design of Zirconade here.
Please go ahead.
It's weird because the model, or the model, the JPEG of the boss is like too big for the screen. I feel like, so it's like I feel like I have to look up an actual like render, like we did with the Fujido's sort of his key art, because it's kind of hard to tell what exactly is going on in this design. It looks kind of like every summon mashed together in some sort of like Sid from Toy Story-esque sort of experiment.
Here's how I'd like to say it. If any of you have gone down the rabbit hole where you look at how angels are described in the book of Ezekiel,
Fear not.
It seems like that's literally what they just did here.
They're just like, yeah, we'll put some, like, there's spikes, and it looks like it has, like, bat wings, but it's, like, wearing the bat wings as, like, a dress, or, like, a blouse or something. It's weird. It's very bizarre looking.
I'm surprised there aren't any belts on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe, you know.
Maybe we're just not seeing it.
Yeah, we have to find the photocopied render from the art book that you had to mail in to get, I'm sure, for this game. Although I'm sure there's probably some Square art books out there that have Before Crisis stuff in there, because I did find that relatively high quality version of Fujito. So I'm like, maybe we'll find one out there, and maybe I'll comment on it again later. But I'm trying to look up for it now, but I'm don't know. I'm vamping because I'm fumbling the spelling of Zirconade. And Google is not helping me. Okay. Well, I went to the Final Fantasy wiki, and it's literally just the same image that we see. And there's nothing. Oh, no. Okay. All right.
Oh, you
okay.
got something?
There is.
Something?
I got stuff. Yeah, it is way bigger. Like, there's way more of it that we don't see in the game, which is very weird to me. I'm just gonna send it to you, Nick, and I'm just gonna send you the link to the.
Where you send it over Discord?
Yes, over Discord right now.
Oh,
yeah, this is great for this audio podcast. But I mean, honestly, it reminds me a lot of like a Persona boss.
That's why I'm sticking to biblical angel here. Like, that's what.
Yeah, and honest, and it has the things underneath it are like the same, like the Keyblade things that Fujito had on his arms.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. I mean, yeah. And for
no
viewers at home,
can confirm no belts.
No belts, but definitely some Keyblade things.
Keyblade.
And like these weird sort of curved, I don't know if that's part of its back thing, or there's a lot going on. It's a very busy design for sure. And yeah, for the listener at home, yeah, it's if you go to the Final Fantasy wiki, it's there, and you'll see some, I'm presuming stuff from
I have a question, Chris, I have a question. Maybe we brought this up earlier. Maybe we talked about this in a previous episode. Maybe I've just got a bad memory. But did we know that Fujito was Bugenhagen's former apprentice?
I feel like if we knew that, then we would have talked about that. I paused there because I scrolled up and I see what you're saying. That feels like such a
big chunk of information that we might have missed. Or it just wasn't translated right or something.
Yeah, maybe
again,
it was like a throwaway line.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I guess when you think about it,
or it could just be a fucking thing in an Ultimania. Like,
Yeah, I mean, we did see Bugenhagen, but I don't think Fujito was ever there. I think that was when we were doing all that stuff with Red. I don't think Fujito ever showed up there. Although I don't know. We might have to return on that. But if that, I went to the page for Fujito and it doesn't say anything about that at all.
But if you go to Zirconiade's page, the second paragraph, it's right there.
It says it there. But yeah, it doesn't. And if you go to his page, it says nothing. That is very bizarre.
And this
is where demented scientist and former apprentice to Bugenhagen.
This is why I'm glad they're doing it, because like, through Remake, Rebirth, they really got to correct some of the inconsistencies between the compilation.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like a lot of the compilation stuff, because it feels so, everything was sort of, it's like a standalone thing almost. It felt like, because it felt like it is an anthology, but it feels that way also, where everything is sort of tangentially connected, but like also like it also feels like they're have gone and things. And with this game in particular, I am willing to forgive stuff because, I'm sure there's probably stuff on it, like you said, like an Ultimania or something.
I fell down a rabbit hole, and I just want to share this with you and the listeners. It's about Bugenhagen, and it's got nothing to do with Before Crisis, but I promise we'll get back into it, but I don't know where else I could slip this information in. Anyway, the etymology of Bugenhagen's name has two inspirations. One, Bugenhagen is named for a character of the same name in The Omen. In the film, Bugenhagen is an archaeologist who relates a great deal of the lore of the Antichrist to the protagonist so they may stop him. Additionally, Bugenhagen has a historical and philosophical namesake. Johannes Bugenhagen was a deeply influential figure in the Protestant Reformation and was called the Apostle of the North for his work in bringing the Lutheranism to the northern German city-states and the Scandinavian kingdoms is the best part. However, he is perhaps most famous for being Martin Luther's pastor in Wittenberg.
Oh.
So just a fun fact of where they plucked the name Bugenhagen out of.
Interesting. And to help tie it back in, there was a scene. If you go down on Bugenhagen's thing, it does say a literal sentence about Before Crisis that the one thing that happened with Bugenhagen there is, he did speak to Fujito there. And there's a picture as well. So to answer that question, yes, I guess Fujito was there. But I love that. That is probably the most off the rails thing. But that's super interesting though. And now honestly, I feel like we might have to, I don't know.
We might need to watch The Omen, bro.
might need to watch The Omen. Might need to read some Wikipedia pages.
Well, because I mean, when you think about it, if I've never seen The Omen, but if the guy Bugenhagen was the dude who understood the coming of the Antichrist or the apocalypse and fed that information to the protagonist, I mean, that's essentially what he's doing in FF7, right?
Yeah. That's basically the purpose, the exact same purpose he serves there.
We should watch The Omen and compare the Antichrist to Sephiroth.
Oh, Jesus.
Who knows?
that ties into stuff we were talking about before the podcast.
Bro, next thing you know, we get to the end of the film and he's like, I will never be a memory. And then we're just that Leo DiCaprio meme, right there.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay, anyways.
Anyway, back to Before Crisis.
We kept the people waiting long enough, and God knows for what's coming, they don't need to wait any longer in anticipation for what is coming. So we're fighting Zirconade, right? He's got a lot of weird keyblades and stuff, and it is very much from this point forward, this game goes full anime, full JRPG.
You had a famous quote about Dirge, that this was some shonen-ass shit.
Yeah, you know what?
We're back.
This is where it all began, baby. So, yeah, we literally get a whole thing of okay, it's, oh my god, my attacks are ineffective against it. What am I going to do? And then 4 seemingly random Turks show up, being nunchucks, 2 guns, and Rod, which I love Rod because it's the only one that sounds like it could actually be his name. Oh, what's your name, Rod? Oh no, that's your designation. No, that's my name.
Not Rod.
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 I'm Rod, and I'm the Rod Turk. Which I was the moment when this happened. I'm like, man, I feel like this game should have been a game where you're playing as a party of Turks and you can swap between them depending on what enemies you're fighting. But again, the limitations of this game being on the type of platform that it's on is man, they could absolutely not do something that complicated. If they couldn't launch Final Fantasy 15 without allowing you to play the full party, they as sure as fuck were not going to do it with Before Crisis. But yeah, this was the final moment for me where I was like, man, I have lamented before in episodes with this that I'm like, man, I want more Turks. I wish the Turks were more involved. I mean, sort of looking back across the game now that we're at the end, I'm thinking more and more, and I'm like, man, this game was just kind of like, you know, like there's some new stuff in there, but a lot of it was stuff that we already knew, and we're just like experiencing it again through this Japanese flip phone screen. You know, it seemed very weird and almost kind of actually, you know, when you think about it, this is kind of like, what if Remake was like a remake? Like, I kind of feel like maybe this is sort of our, like, hey, if Remake was just a straight up 1-to-1 remake, maybe it would have been like not so, like, it would have been disappointing, right? Because it's kind of like with a lot of the stuff going on in this game, a lot of it is going through the events of Crisis Core and you know, stuff that we knew with like Nibelheim and stuff like that. And it's just kind of like, yeah, we get,
go ahead.
Like, we got, yeah, no, you go.
I was just gonna say, not only that there's a lot of loose threads in this story that never got tied up by the end of Dirge. There were a lot of loose threads that.
Oh yeah, and we'll get there.
And
Trust
we'll get
me.
there. But if we did a shot for shot, remake of FF7, all the Dirge stuff would be unanswered. All the Before Crisis stuff would be unanswered. Like, it just makes sense they did it this way, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and the thing, like, I don't want to really shit talk this boss fight all that much, because it is meant to be the final boss fight. It kind of sucks. It kind of is like, well, only in like, I feel like if we had like a proper build up. I mean, again, we're also fighting just, you know, it's kind of another JRPG trope of like, oh, we're just fighting God at the end. You know, like there's no attachment to Zirconade. We didn't even know who Zirconade was until like fucking a day ago, you know, in game time. You know, it's like, what is this thing? We didn't even have a name for it for a long time. We're just like, oh no, it's the big evil. And I don't know. I feel like maybe because I'm more used to, you know, maybe a Sephiroth or a Genesis where there are sort of, or even Vice. I'll throw Vice in with this with this analogy of like an enemy and like a sort of the final confrontation being something that like, okay, like there's a sort of attachment here, there's a connection, and it's not just like, oh, you're the big bad that is like, if we don't stop you, you're gonna, you know, like, I don't know, I feel like it definitely works against this game. And then on top of that, this whole fight trying to be like this very sort of cinematic sort of thing where you know, credit where credit is due, like we were talking about before when we were fighting the dominatrix French fries. There is, you know, there's stuff like, oh, you know, he's like launching shit out, and you know, there's like a certain, you know, he does the, you know, he fires the hype beam, and then it's like, okay, you dodge that, and then he has like a pattern of stuff, and like there's a little, like, as much depth as this game is allowed to have mechanically, right? Like, they put out all the stops for these last two fights, which, you know, I guess, hey, if they're gonna do that, I mean, we'll talk about where all the budget really went later on, but you know, in terms of mechanics, like, you know, it's hard. Like, I don't want to be too hard because it's, you know, it is something that is so crippled by the time that it came out and the platform that it's on. It just seems like unfair almost to sort of dunk on it for being very limited and very sort of basic, right? But it also can't really talk about it without bringing that up, you know? And it's like, it just, you know, sort of makes me want to believe that, you know, whatever the Ever Crisis version of this is going to be, it will, you know, it's not going to change the plot, maybe. I mean, it could, maybe, who knows? But, you know, I'm not expecting to be like, man, I'm going to feel this beef with Zirconade later, you know? Because I also kind of look at Zirconade almost like Chaos in Dirge, right? Where it's like, oh, that was the big bad, but, you know, there's
Omega.
Like
I think you mean Omega.
Oh, Omega, yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Strangers in Paradise. But yeah, it's just like that. I don't know. Like, I feel like I would sort of like not mind the sort of like, I don't really care about Zeta Raid that much. because it's a cool ass fight, right? And it's like, oh, this is a big ass spectacle fight, right? Like I would forgive not having a connection to the final boss if it was a cool boss fight, but considering that the most that you can do in this game is literally move up, down, left, and right and shoot, you know, what can you do? But as we continue on with this fight, you know, we go through all the tropes of, you know, the, you know, shotguns fighting, then one of the other Turks comes in and like throws a couple punches and is like, oh man, and then shotgun's like, let me back at him, and he's like, all right, you better save some for me, and like, you know, it's very it's all very cliche, and I honestly I think it's kind of funny. And as we progress, we get to, I guess, the second or third phase almost, and shotgun gets hit by the, you know, the big old move that is gonna take her down, right? And then we literally have another moment where I was kind of confused at first, because like the screen goes black and I hear, like, because I'm thinking like, oh, maybe this is when the rest of the Turks come in and like with their powers combined, you know, through the power of love and anime and friendship, they can defeat the big evil. But it cuts back to text that says, I'll tell you all about space once I get back. This ain't the end of my dream. And I was like, wait a minute. Is that Sid? And then sure enough, you see Sid's portrait show up, and I'm like, wait, is Sid coming to save the day? And then as they're like, you know, Shotgun is like, oh yeah, man, I guess it sucks that Sid's never going to be able to go to space. And then it goes down the line of, then we go to Nanaki next, and Shotgun's like, man, yeah, it really sucks. I would love to help you go back to your homeland. And then Yuffie is there as well, and then Aerith is there, and then Shotgun literally goes, I still have the will to go on. I could come back from the brink of death and pull this, with the power of belief from my friends, or at the very least acquaintances, these people. And it's like, I get it, right? Like, again, is another sort of limitation, because we don't really spend a lot of time with these characters no. as Shotgun. So, like, the connection really isn't there, but, like, it, you know, I guess you're supposed to sort of imprint yourself onto whatever Turk you're playing a little bit, and maybe sort of have that sort of, like, oh, like, your connection to these characters, not necessarily the connection to the character that you're playing as, which is weird to me. Like,
and
that's
I'm trying to make sense of, like, why were these four chosen, right? Because she met other characters from the original.
Yeah, where's Barrett? He's still holding that rock.
I mean,
Corel. Where's Cloud? Where's Zack? You know.
But when I think about what separates
where any of the other Turks?
Exactly. I think what separates these four, right? I'm trying to figure out what separates these four from the other OG party members that she met. And when I try to think about it, I feel like when I see Yuffie, she showed Shotgun the dark side of Shinra, right? She saw the kind of impression.
Yeah, that's
Shinra...
when that was her first sort of like, oh, am I working for the big bad evil guys?
Like, yeah, Yuffie kind of led to Shotgun actually questioning herself and whether or not what she's doing is right. As a parallel, when you look at Sid is like an example.
I'm gonna go to space.
Like it's an example. Like she thought it was so cool, right? She's like,
she was a Sid stan for sure. And
Absolutely.
It's like, I mean, yeah, like I get it, but also I'm like, is it really? I mean, I guess, kinda. Like I'm like, I don't know. If it did feel very weird, because like I get the Yuffie stuff, and to the game's credit, it when Yuffie does show up, she does kind of talk about that. Of like, oh, if we only had tried harder, would less children out there hate us or something, like something along those lines. And I'm like, okay, like again, this game does this stuff where a lot of it seems very sort of very dated, very old, and very sort of constrained. But there are times when it's like you almost had something. You kind of like...
Well, I was going to ask, because I was going to try and conflate the four of them. Like, what do the four of them have in common? I've got 3 of 4 figured out. And I think what it is, and you might have to help me on Aerith, because Aerith is the one whose I can't quite remember what she did and didn't share with Shotgun, but Yuffie, Nanaki, and Sid all shared their dreams with Shotgun. They were all open about what their dreams of the future had. I can't remember if Aerith did that. I
don't think so, but I think from what I remember, I feel like Aerith was just more of like kind of almost how, with Aerith's sort of ability to be that sort of like, oh, like you make me view the world in a different perspective. You're you're one of those types of people. Like she kind of does that for Zack and Cloud, like a little bit more closely. Cause like I remember, when we met Aerith, we, fell through the ceiling in the whole 9 yards. Right. And I feel like there wasn't that much of, especially when compared to the rest of them. I mean, I honestly was a little bit even surprised with like they went with Nanaki and just be like, I mean, I guess Barrett makes the like if Barrett showed up, it would make the least sense because they had like they literally only interacted for like 20 minutes maybe. Like they went like she went through him with
there was
through
no
the tunnel
impact
with him.
There was no exchange of impact, right? At least
and like
at least with Cloud, Cloud had a big impact on Shotgun.
Right, yeah, it should have been Cloud. Like, yeah, I feel like there could have been other people in there, and I thought maybe they were going to go through like everybody, like kind of like how they did that with
well,
Dirge
that's
of
why
Cerberus.
I'm trying to figure out, is it that it's the ones who shared their dreams with her? Because 3 out of 4 fit the bill, and the only reason Aerith doesn't is because I literally just don't remember.
Yeah, and like I mean, I'm sure if we go back maybe and look at it, maybe it'll be like, oh, okay, maybe they had some sort of a connection, right? But Shotgun also kind of had a sort of like, hey, I get along with everyone sort of personality, And as the protagonist of this game, like you're kind of, like you kind of have to, I guess, to certain like to just to, like no, we don't have time. We don't have time for. We need to be very A and B with this shit, But I don't know. Yeah, like there are definitely some shades of it there. But yeah, all of that aside, though, all this build up to our I believe in my friends and my friends believe in me moment culminates in Shotgun unlocking her ability to do a limit break, which is something that I was not even like conscious of. Because I'm like, yeah, because most of the fights that we see are over in 2 seconds. And it's like, why would you ever need to use a limit break, right? Exactly. It didn't even occur to me that she didn't have the ability to do that. And also, that is something that you have to be able... that is a power level thing. Like, you can't... Like, nobody, like, little Timmy down the street isn't born with a limit break. He has to train himself to a point and, I guess... What the game is sort of implying here is that, it is a mental thing as well, that you can unlock your full potential. Because I'm assuming that's what a limit break is, right? I mean, I guess not. It's weird because I never once in my time of knowing Final Fantasy have ever thought about what a limit break is, right? I always was just like, oh, it's a timer that goes on the screen, and once it fills up, you could do a big special move, and that's it. I never thought about the logistics of a limit break, and I gotta give this game credit. No other Final Fantasy game has made me think about a limit break before, or like try to rationalize an ATB meter, you know what I mean, or any of that sort of stuff, or any other mechanics in any of these games, right? But I just think that is probably the hypest thing to come out of this ending. And it's something I honestly, because I was thinking about all the other stuff that happens that I kind of forgot about this moment. Right. Even though the chapter is called Limit Break Concerto, which is also hype as fuck. But yeah, no, did you have any of these thoughts during this moment, Nick, or am I just a rambling madman?
No. I definitely share a lot. I mean, dude, I sat there trying to figure out, okay, what is the thread that unites these particular 4? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean,
and
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that, like, it really, like, sort of continuing what we were saying earlier of, like, this game is trying its very hardest to be. It is limit breaking itself to try and be like, all right, we need to sort of surpass all this, all the other stuff we've been doing and make this, because this is the end all be all sort of moment. And
I was gonna say, as far as the limit break stuff went, I thought it was an amazing twist. I don't even know if you call it a twist. I just felt
it's
it was
weird.
a good job. Like, honestly, I'm actually really upset that the Final Fantasy game that ends in a limit break was this one.
Yeah,
imagine that's how OG ended. Not OG. Imagine that's how Remake ended. You get to the end of the highway and you unlock the first your whole party gets limit breaks. It's such a good idea.
This game's version of the Omni Slash moment, which again also it it sort of is like, all right, is this sort of a watered down version of the stuff that we've already seen in OG, which again, not to take away from it, because it is a cool moment. I just, with everything else with what this game is, like it doesn't really sort of, it still doesn't have that impact for me personally. I mean, it's cool, and the concept of like you have to unlock your limit break basically, and that becomes, a thing that you can do. Like, I like that concept, right? But in practice, it's not really, fighting against this big god demon thing, and the game looking the way it looks. It really sort of is. This is again the ultimate sort of version of like, man, this game had a lot of potential, and just because of the circumstances in which it released and the times it released in, it became something that it could have been more. But with that said,
given their limitations, I think they pulled off the JRPG
the best that they could do.
The best you could do on a Razer flip phone.
Yeah, like honestly, like for the time, I'm sure this was very sort of impressive, especially if you compare this game against other flip phone games that were out at the time, and we've definitely talked about that before. But yeah, I don't want to rag on it too much, because it does feel unfair to a certain extent. It's like, man, you know what? Pong really just didn't have the level of depth that I wanted.
No, the plot was shitty.
In 2020, I played Pong in 2022, and I gotta say, it's kind of overrated. No, but with Shotgun unlocking her limit break and defeating the big evil, and we get a bunch of different sort of shaking images implying that something is happening. But they do like kind of have little moments of Zirconides like blowing up. Like, it kind of cuts back and forth between sort of like a environment shot and then like a close-up of Zirconate blowing up, and it's effectively a slideshow, but I think it's pretty decent for what it is. It conveys what it needs to convey. I guess we'll leave it at that. But also, sort of interestingly, because as what we see Reno and Rude running up, I guess, to join the fight, and they see, oh my God, Zirconade's in the air, and everyone else is up there too. We can't see them, but we just assume, everyone's up there. We don't know what's going on, and then Zirconade blows up, and then we cut back to Aerith. And she's at the infamous Rude getting stood up by that girl Christmas tree from many chapters ago. And then she goes, "It's snowing!" And then the camera is slowly panning up into space, and we see that it is snowing? Question mark? Although I'm assuming it's probably meant to be like... kind of like how at the end of Remake, when all the sort of the flutters in the sky as the
what I first thought.
Were defeated.
That's what I first thought. It's immediately where my fucking tinfoil hat FF7 brain went. But
you know what it is?
What is it?
It's probably, remember, in the opening of OG FF7 when you see all the green, because it's kind of hard to tell. Like, it does look white, and I'm like, I don't. Maybe is it supposed to be green?
I think it is snow. I think it actually is snow in a weird way. Like it could
Like
be
it-
it could be similar to those white dots.
Oh God,
like the sort of
Zirconade
white sprinkles.
brought forward the nuclear winter.
It's some shit, I guess. But it
It
looks
were,
too
I guess
much
we
like
averted the
snow.
nuclear winter, and we just have one nice night of snow. And it's weird because the idea of weather in Midgar is kind of a weird concept because we've never.
That's why my headcanon is that it's snow, and to Aerith, this was like a call from the planet.
Because
Because they show you Aerith at the end. Like, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows Aerith, and it pans up into space, and then we watch the snowfall for a little bit, and kind of what I like how, and this is literally the end of the chapter. So just to recap everyone, we went up and fought the big boss, we killed the big boss, and it literally just ends.
Yep.
Like we cut back to Aerith. I shit you not, you can look it up. The Zirconade's defeated, and then it cuts to Aerith, and she's like, it's snowing, and then the camera pans up into the sky, and we see the snow falling, and then we get one final shot, which is a flip phone under a spotlight, and we see that it has the Shinra logo on the screen, and then the screen goes to black,
Yep.
and then that's it. And you're like, so that's the end of the game.
Yeah.
And well, there is more. There is a epilogue afterwards, which we will get into. But I was like, when I first saw that, I was like, wait, really?
I couldn't believe after all that build up,
Like,
they left us
huh?
off like without.
It's
Like-
just like Game of Thrones it, where they're just like, oh yeah, it's over. Yeah, whatever.
It's like, dude, here's the thing.
We don't have time to explain anything. It's over. We the good guys won.
It's like they let us climax, but they didn't let us get dressed again. They kind of
No.
just left us there. Like, okay, see ya. Like,
Yeah, this game leaves you in a constant state of
you mean you don't want to
post-nut
stay the
depression.
night and talk? You just wanted to finish and get out of here? Like, that's kind of how I felt leaving. I
I have
feel like
one shoe on already.
like legit, like before I could even get out of the bed, before Crisis left, went home. I felt used.
Just like, yeah, just as you open your eyes back up, you just hear the door close. You're like, what? Huh? What? It's so weird. It's like because the game did a really good job of the build up
Yep.
to this climax, and like, I get it that
Bro, we were so hyped.
Yeah, like I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to see. Man, I I went back and listened to the last episode that we did just to like, sort of remember some of the stuff that we had brought up, and just to like refresh myself as well.
Yep.
And yeah, at the end of that episode, we were like, oh man, I can't fucking wait. Oh man, this is like, like we said at the top of this episode, it's gonna be some big, like they're building up to something big, like it's gonna be, we're gonna have the big boss fight, whatever, but what else is gonna happen, and the fact that it just literally, like, we defeat the boss and then it just like straight to credits. Well, not straight to credits because there's an epilogue, but for all intents and purposes, because this epilogue is it's not a great epilogue in the sense of like the story of Before Crisis. It's really not the best epilogue,
Right.
Which I guess, unless there's anything that you wanted to add about the ending. quote,
Honestly,
unquote, of Before
I have to be
Crisis.
honest. I'm way more interested in talking about the epilogue than
Yeah, so there is stuff to talk about in the epilogue for sure, which starts, by the way, of Sung is being sort of interviewed by the heads of Shinra, and sort of being debriefed, and because at this point we're thinking, oh well, the Turks were sort of the enemies of Shinra, or they sort of became, they were to be sort of done with Shinra, and as we're Sung's being like, yeah, so whatever, man, I did it, I don't care. But then as all that's going on, Rufus comes in with Reno and Rude, and man, I would love to see like if someone like recreated this in like actual artwork or something, because it's
In
kind of
Unreal Engine 5.
It feels like they're trying to do an iconic shot of like you have Rufus in the middle and he's flanked by Reno and Rude, and there's like the ray of light behind them. They're standing in a doorway, and I'm like, man, I feel like this would look really cool if they had all the like the updated models and stuff. And who knows? Maybe we'll see. I keep thinking of Rufus at the end of Remake and is sitting in his chair. But yeah, so we get the scene that we were kind of like thinking about before and being like, oh, how does it happen? Where, how do we get to the point where the Turks are like the enemies of Shinra back to, being working with them again? And Rufus just comes in and is like, hey, I think the Turks should be alive. And President Shinra's like, that's preposterous. And he's like, but it's really not, though. And he's like, yeah, well, I guess I taught you well, son.
Well, I think part of his thing is like, hey, look, Verdot is out. Verdot's out.
Yeah,
Elfie's out. All those people that were in your way, they're out. And he's basically like, and I'm running this bitch. And there's not a whole lot President Shinra can do about it. He might be president. He might be president of the company, but is he really going to sow the seeds of dissent in Rufus and the Turks?
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, we kind of saw that they were building up, like, Rufus was going to use the Turks as sort of, like, a bargaining chip. Because, like, well, not necessarily a bargaining chip, but, like, be like, hey, if I do this stuff for you guys, you can roll with me and be, like, my own little personal army, my own little, internal police, in a way. For when, when things go bad, but then he doesn't, things work out in his favor anyway, and he doesn't have to throw a coup against his own father. But yeah, so we then cut to all of them on, I guess, the roof of a Shinra tower. And, Rufus is just like, yeah, I didn't do this for you. I did it for me. And, Sung's like, thank you and all that. And he's like, just, I don't know, do a good job. Make it worth my time,
Well, when you think about it, like, Shinra would be kind of out of options. Because when you think about what the Turks are doing, they're kind of monitoring Aerith. Well, not kind of. That is what they're doing.
They are, yeah. That is their express purpose. Especially now that since they went from, like, a couple, maybe like a dozen or so of them to just 3. In this cost,
well, they have Elrena. They have Elrena as well. Like not all of that dozen got taken out. Like they still have Elrena. They still have Cisne. I'm trying to think. Well, no, because
Cisne was well. Well, I guess yeah, because in Crisis Core she's in Gongaga, but I could have sworn that she was part of like the final assaults on. Because we see, like, at the very beginning of Chapter 24, they do, like, a sort of recap thing. Like, sort of being like, last time, previously, on Before Crisis. And Cisne's picture is on there. So I think Cisne was involved. But I think, because we did talk about this before, that because this is technically the first appearance of Cisne, a.k.a. Shuriken, which is she didn't even have an official name until Crisis Core. I think she was just meant to be just another Turk, but either the design team or somebody, whoever the play testers or something, were like, maybe we should do something more with that character. And I think that's when she. So I think in terms of this game, she is now missing, along with all the other Turks named after weaponry.
Which would make sense, because, again, I think the only Turks we get to see in OG are Rude, Reno, Elrena, and Sung. I'm trying to think if there's another one.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, remember, at the point that we are now, Elena is not, she is not a Turk yet. But maybe, the game doesn't go into this, but I now assume, because after the stuff that happened with her in the chapter previously, and all this, the little stuff that we got with her, and now, her sister's gone now. Yeah. So maybe be like, this is like this event spurred her to even further be like, all right, yeah, I'll be a Turk, whatever, and excel at
the only
punching dudes.
The only Turks that have been named are the following: Verdot, Sung, Vincent Valentine, Reno, Rude, Cisne, Elena. I kept saying El Reina, but that's a Kingdom Hearts character.
Yeah.
And they actually look alike. I actually think Elena was the inspiration for El Reina. But anyway, those are the only ones named, which is interesting. Like, it appears they don't consider those weapon names to be actual names.
Considering how they sort of treated the rest of them, I sort of get why. But again, we'll there's definitely more stuff here. But I will just to continue forward here, because we had mentioned before, because we kind of sort of get our, they're like, hey, yep, there's only 3 of us left, and we're kind of like, we're a shadow of our former selves. But as the Sung is about to do his epic speech, we get an alarm. Oh no, there's intruders in Mako Reactor 1. And you're like, uh-oh. It's time. Literally, I think, I don't know if this is supposed to be the next day, because I have not been... They have shown dates throughout this game, but I have not paid attention to any of them. So I don't know how long it's been since the Zirconade fight. But I like to think it's literally the next day. And they're just like, we were 1 day away from OG starting, and if Shotgun didn't defeat Zirconade with the power of friendship, OG would never have happened. And that we literally just did it in the nick of time. But what I really want to talk about is that we get a scene where all the budget was spent in this game, where we get a close up of Sung's portrait art, and there's like a 4-frame animation of him taking off his ponytail, or undoing his ponytail, and becoming the Sung that we know and love in OG, or know and love to hate in OG. And I thought that shit was cool as fuck. And that was another thing too, where I was just like, oh shit, really? Like, this game has had like 0 frames of animation. So it was like, it was nice to see that they like, oh, okay, they had the moment of, Sung, that transformation moment that we were talking about and have been talking about for a while now. It's like, oh, this is meant to be the symbolic version of that, right? Or the, like, hey, like,
I have some really bad news.
Sung is reborn into the version that we know. I have some really bad
news. Chris, I have some really bad news.
Oh, God.
The Sung ponytail has been retconned. So I just went back to the remake. I went back to the remake flashback scene to when he's dealing with baby Aerith, and he's got his hair's undone.
But he has it in Crisis Core Reunion in that 2 frames that you see him.
Okay, I didn't know what is going on with Sung's hair here, man. If it's supposed to be a signal of identity, they need to fix this. Because in this Aerith baby scene, little girl scene, I should say, he's got it all long.
Baby.
She's a little baby. But he's got it all long. It should be ponytailed. It should be ponytailed.
Who knows? Maybe that was before we've even seen him here. So maybe he did have it down. And then maybe Verdot's like, hey,
it'd look a lot better if you had it tied up.
Wrap it up, Sung.
Man.
Give the enemy something to grab onto. You could go. People could take that statement and run with it. But yeah, I honestly, I like this scene a lot, because I do like this symbolic gesture of like, oh, this is him, transitioning into the Sung that we know, right? The only thing, and kind of I'll go and, it kind of ties in the stuff that we will get into, because as of now, we don't know. At this point, the rest of the Turks are missing in action. And we kind of, even right after the scene, we get a sort of official report of the leader of Avalanche assassinated, Verdot, the former leader of the Turks, terminated, nearly all of the Turks missing in action, signed Rufus Shinra. And you're thinking, okay, well, that's maybe a, that could be a red herring, right? That could be like, because Rufus, I don't think it'd be above or beneath Rufus, I guess, to forge a document, right? To write a false report. But yeah, then the confusing thing is that after that, I would expect this to be like, oh, okay, we're gonna, but the events of OG are happening, so I guess maybe not. But I was gonna be like, oh, maybe we're gonna cut back in on, the rest of the Turks waking up in a field somewhere, or something, right? But then we get a little sort of ending thing of like, and thus a new crisis begins, and then credits. Like legit credits. I love that they have taken, they're doing like the slideshow thing with various JPEGs that we've seen throughout the game. And technically, I guess that would be the end of the game. But there is another part to this epilogue. I guess technically would be a post-credits scene for this game. Where it jumps, instead of getting any sort of other stuff, we jump right to when Meteor is falling. And you're like, oh, okay. All right. So at this point, I have no idea what to expect. Because I'm like, all right, well, we obviously brushed up with the beginning of OG, right? And then, the credits rolled to be like, all right, yeah, now OG happens, and the rest. So I'm like, what could this possibly be? And then when I see that it's when Meteor is coming down, I'm like, okay, like where is this going? What's going on? And then we see Reno come in, and Rude's coming in, then Elena comes in. They're all talking like, hey, they're evacuating Midgar, right? And you're like, okay, cool. And we get to see Elena in her Turk outfit. It's really cool. And then they meet up with Sung, and then some debris falls down in front of them, and then Reno goes, oh man, well, we have to, we got to get this debris out of the way to evacuate the rest of Sector 5. There's no way only the 4 of us could move all of this. And I was like, you're not fucking doing this right now. You're not fucking doing this right now. And guess what? From out of nowhere, we get a text bubble from question mark that says, to give up is unforgivable, right? And then they turn around and they all go, they do the exclamation mark, question mark thing. And everybody's there. Verdot is there. And the rest of the Turks are there. And they're all doing their action pose. And they're there. And everyone's like, yeah, oh my God, Verdot, guys, you're back. And they're like, let me just double check. It's like, I don't even think they say anything. Okay, yeah, no, it does. Verdot does talk after the cool, everyone's cool pose scene. But he just says, hey, what's the matter, Chief? Hurry up and give us our orders. And Sung then goes, yeah, listen up, Turks and former Turks. This is an emergency. We must rescue the remaining civilians and evacuate them at once. And then it cuts to black, and then it says, got it, on the screen. And then the piece de resistance. It says Finn at the end, and that's it. That's the end of the game. So
here. I'll go. We're gonna start. I'm gonna start by trying to be positive. Okay. And then we'll move on. So here's what I think they're trying to convey here. As somebody who moderately enjoyed this experience known as Before Crisis, here's what I think they're trying to convey. Is that nothing is successful without the Turks. Zack doesn't get away without the Turks. A lot of our heroes don't get away with some stuff in this game without the Turks. The new crisis doesn't get an opportunity to be solved without the Turks. I think the whole idea is these are the heroes in the shadows who will defeat the apocalyptic being.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Not all heroes
Sometimes
wear capes.
They wear suits.
Suit and ties, baby. And they'll kill the god in the ethereal sky that looks like Chapter 19. Anyway, so I get that. And I get that they cut to Meteor to show that this is the next big task the Turks will take on. is that they'll go, and when Meteor's coming, they will evacuate everybody in Midgar, thus by making up for their misdeeds of dropping the plate on Sector 7. Are they fully redeemed? No, but these are the Turks. One hand is dirty, one hand is clean. So I like that sort of full circle, where at the beginning of the game, they're responsible for the drop of the plate, but by the end of the game, they're responsible for evacuating everybody. So, I just want to say, at a base level, I like that stuff. I think that's cool. I will say, this ending fucking tripped all over itself, dude.
Yeah.
It tripped all over it. It just kind of...
I think that's
again,
putting it as lightly as possible.
I feel like I was in my early 20s. I was in the bed with Before Crisis. And before I even realized I had finished, Before Crisis was backing out of the driveway. Backing out of the driveway. Leaving me there. Like, wait, what?
Tires screeching.
Yeah, exactly. Tires screeching.
Dogs barking. Mid-nut. That's exactly what this is.
That it just gone. Like, I would have preferred the blue balls, man. Like, it's...
Oh, my God.
It's not bad.
Yeah,
it just... Like, it could have used another 2 chapters. It could have
honestly, yeah, it could have, like, if the epilogue was just more than, like... Yeah, that's it. You know, like, I feel like there definitely could have been more. I mean, obviously, like, you know, the whole sort of surprise reveal that, oh, everyone's here, including Verdot. But
ruined
is
the
Elfie
ending.
alive?
Ruined the ending. I'll say that, too. That ruins the entire ending.
Verdot being there ruins it for me.
Verdot and, like, the rest of them, dude, like, I felt like it was nice, neat, and clean. We got to the end
like
of this.
Verdot especially.
I'm pissing off my dog.
I mean.
I'm starting to rile up my dog now. But I feel like we got to the end of this game.
Yeah, don't transfer that energy.
I can't help it sometimes. But we get to the end of this game, and it's like, oh, that's why we haven't heard about Verdot and Shotgun and martial arts.
Because they're all dead.
They're all freaking dead. Makes perfect sense. Neat and
Yeah.
clean. We can move on. And then we see all the evacuations in the sector. I'm like, oh, look at them carrying out Verdot's legacy. He'd be so proud. And then it's like, oh, he's here.
Oh, he's here. Hey,
Like,
guys.
you just took
What's up?
all of the emotional weight out of this finale. You took.
Yeah, so that's and then something that I brought up in our sort of pre-recording, something that sort of like, it almost... Like, you know how we were just talking about how cool it was, that scene in the previous epilogue where it ends and, you know, Sung, you know, he undoes his ponytail and, like, oh, it's him transitioning over. And now, because this is the part of the game where we have to come up with our own headcanon, because there just literally is just a huge gap in the story and nothing else, as far as we know, explains it. Who knows? Maybe it is explained in a book. Maybe in The Kids Are All Right or something. Maybe they say something about. I don't know. But it kind of ruins, kind of what you're saying. It ruins the impact and kind of hurts Sung's character a little bit, because if he knew that they were all alive this whole time, it kind of doesn't feel as good.
Not at all.
I think Kobe agrees.
Kobe does agree. I mean, okay. I won't edit those. I edit some of his barking out, at least when I catch it, like, mid-editing. But maybe I'll leave these ones in, because it's nice to know he's as frustrated as we are.
But yeah, I mean, obviously this is, like, the biggest... Well, not the biggest. It's definitely a letdown, right? And it's like, I feel like I don't know how to feel about it. I felt like I had... literally, when I watched this for the first time, I stood up. I went outside and I took a big deep breath and I just was like, that can't be real. Like, I must have hallucinated that. Like, there's got to be more. And I came back in and I looked and I'm like, nope, that's the last video on the playlist.
Yep. See, me, I'll do exactly what I did. I started rubbing my hand on my forehead and I just went,
oh my God, I
can't wait forever, Crisis.
I did not think to look, because to be fair, most of these videos, you know, they have, like, you know, kind of decent views for what this is, right? Most of them don't have comments, though. This episode does have comments, and I didn't even think to look at them, but there are a lot of people with their theories in there. about how Verdot is still there, and it involves Sung using the full cure materia, which I didn't even I totally forgot about that. That maybe so okay. Because remember in the flashback Sung scene with Sung and Verdot, and we get all his backstory and stuff, and he gives him that full cure materia. Remember?
Yes.
And that's how that chapter ended. So I guess maybe I would accept that, but I still don't like it. even if that is what they were trying to do.
You know why I don't like that too? Because it's like, all right, so like, why didn't we just give?
Everything I said basically.
Why didn't we just give Aerith a fucking full cure materia then? Like, come on.
Yeah, it is literally like it is. Basic the full cure materia is the MacGuffin of like just like, oh yeah, it is the worst case scenario. If that is true, because I'm thinking like now that I was reading that, I'm like, oh, I do remember that, but I thought like I don't know, I thought that was more of like a symbolic gesture, of like, oh here's take this full cure materia in case you break your arm or some shit. I don't know, I didn't think it was gonna be like, oh you know what? Also, again, I mean this game like you can't really convey subtlety in this game, so it's something where like if there was any sort of
I was just gonna interject. So Grimoire Valentine actually elaborates. The guy who uploaded all these videos elaborates on this situation. So here's what he says. He says, no. According to On the Way to a Smile, which was like a
I knew it was
novella.
A book. It had to be a book.
They all survived. All the Turks survived and went into hiding. It is revealed that Sung is rescued by 3 of them after he is struck down by Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII. Reeve Tuesti / Kate Sith is secretly still in contact with them, including Verdot the whole time. And here we go. We got more. And now he says, who knows? One thing is certain, and that is at least Verdot survived, since he appears in On the Way to a Smile, which takes place like 1 or 2 months after this incident. However, he is no longer able to say the word family. So that most likely means that Elfie / Felicia's
Vin Diesel's arch enemy.
And then we have one more. It is unknown whether or not she survived being shot by Sung. The only thing we know is, as I mentioned, that she is dead shortly after Meteor Fall. Indeed, Sears was a fantastic friend and ally to Elfie. He truly did everything he could in order to save both Elfie and the planet. And that's Grimoire's explanation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just think the idea of like he can no longer say the word family, and the internet has ruined my mind so much that I just immediately am like, oh yeah, Fast and the Furious, yeah.
Family.
But I mean, excuse me. I guess because Elfie was dying, right? But that was because she had the Zirconade materia in her, right?
Yeah,
and like
Hojo sealed it into her skin.
Yeah, and then she went into a coma, right? And then she wasn't really like... I'm trying to remember what happened after that, because she was like... I was under the impression that she was going to probably die anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Like she was eventually it was like kind of too... She was too far gone to save her, right? Mm-hmm. So... All right, okay. Now, with all this knowledge now, which I'm glad that this happened like live during the episode because...
Well, I have one more thing to interject that I found.
Yes, please.
So apparently, Verdot throughout, and this is according to On the Way to a Smile, Case of Shinra, Verdot continued to watch over everything that happened in OG, and even provided Sung, Elrena, Reno, and Rude with the information on Rufus when Rufus went missing in Calm not long after the events of FF7.
Oh, okay. So Verdot, not only was Verdot around, he was omnipotently watching everything play out. So
Rufus wasn't staging a coup this whole time. Verdot was.
Hey, with all the stuff that he's been through, I honestly, if Verdot was like, hey, no, I want to head Shinra, I'd be like, yeah, cool. because like I feel like he has more of a claim to that shit than Rufus does.
Yeah.
Because Rufus is just like, oh, I mean, it's my daddy's company, so of course I'm gonna take it over, right? But yeah, no, Verdot went through some actual real shit, and I think would maybe deserve, and he's a decent enough fellow, I guess. So I'm like, yeah, you're not. I mean,
if you bring him back for Rebirth or whatever, just
dude,
kill him. Just make sure you kill him when it's done.
To me, this sort of like, this almost signifies to me, or solidifies, I guess.
We're gonna see
Tuesti.
We're gonna see Reeve on the phone with somebody, and you'll see just like his mouth, right? And it'll be question mark, and he'll be feeding like Reeve information, and like everyone's like, who is that? And then you and I are gonna be like two of the 6,000 people in the world who know who that is.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Game's gonna sell 12 million copies. 6,000 of us are gonna.
It'll be like the Kunsel moment in Remake.
Exactly.
When you're like, what? Who? Yeah. I mean, now that there's I fucking knew that it was gonna be explained in a book. I knew, like, in some book somewhere that I'm sure that there was probably some justification for this, which I mean, it definitely, it doesn't necessarily change my opinion on the way that it was handled in the game, because I am a firm believer that you shouldn't have stuff that is very crucial to the story that you're telling be told in optional material.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, I mean,
yep.
I mean, well,
Also, dude, I would not be nearly as angry about this ending if there wasn't the fake out kill by Sung, right? Because that move by Sung, you're like, oh, like, that's what turned him. You see him kill them, and you're like, that's what turned him into a bastard.
Yeah,
like, and that's what fake death, and then to bring them back anyway. It's like, no, why wasn't it just, hey, listen, same thing Cisne did for Zack, right? Where Cisne radioed in, oh, I lost him. If you saw Sung do the same thing Cisne did for Zack, and was like, listen, you and Elfie get out of here and live a life away from Shinra. And then it kind of just reconvenes from there. That is infinitely better than I'm going to pretend to kill them, which sort of explains why I turn a little more cold in the future. But then turns out none of that actually happened.
Yeah, that he's, playing, and that's what I was going to get to before we had this little revelation here. But yeah, basically, like, because I felt like if Sung knew that Verdot and everyone else was dead, right, and that he's like, all right, I'm gonna follow through with this, promise that I made to Verdot, right, and become the leader of the Turks, the heart of the Turks, and yada yada yada, right, and that he is carrying on his will. That to me felt a lot stronger.
Me too.
And like was like, okay, like this explains a lot more like why he is the way he is. But now that it is sort of an act, and that like he knew the whole time, and like this is the type of stuff.
This is cheap ass play.
Yeah, this is kind of a bad way to do a sequel sort of thing, or not a sequel, a prequel, where it's like now this sort of raises a lot of other things, and then you just explain it by being like, he knew all the time. He just never said anything about it. No one ever asked, so
yeah,
he never brought it up. Like, I don't know. It's definitely a weak thing. But again, Before Crisis was like the beginning, right, of all this stuff. Or, like at least where, I'm not sure how they were thinking of it in the grand scope of things. And like, it kind of really is like the biggest piece of evidence that I could point to where I'm like, man, with maybe Crisis Core being an exception, all the other compilation material just feels like tacked on.
I just
in a lot of ways.
At this point, dude, I kind of just focus on what I'll call the compilation trilogy, which is Crisis Core, OG, Advent Children.
Yeah,
those are like the highlights.
And those are the strongest of all. I mean, and even Advent Children's not like, honestly, it's so funny because I used to think, I always thought Advent Children was cool, but I'm like, it's kind of a weak thing. Like, it's cool visually.
I don't even think it's meant to like hold up with other entries in the compilation.
Honestly,
I think they were just doing. I think they mostly did Advent Children for fun. Because they had all this new tech.
Honestly, it felt like the epilogue of that Before Crisis just had, but for OG, almost of like, here's a little. I mean, it had a little bit more stuff in it, but it didn't really go too deep. into stuff. That was my biggest letdown with Advent Children. Is like I was expecting it to be a little bit like delve a little bit more.
The Midgar, but the thing, I guess the Midgar section of OG is longer than Advent Children.
That is true. That is true.
Like,
and,
it was there.
I mean,
it was there because they wanted to make cool action scenes. Because they became obsessed when they started making all the cool fucking action scene cutscenes. Square Enix became obsessed.
Yeah, and hey, I totally get it.
Yeah,
because so was I.
Makes sense.
I mean, hey, I would watch that the end fight with Cloud and Sephiroth like on repeat. I had like a video file that I played. I would play that on. I had Advent Children for my PSP back in the day, and that's where I watched it for the first time. Believe it. I'm sure I've mentioned that before. But yeah, I would watch that and the fight between Sephiroth, Genesis, and Angeal in Crisis Core.
I still watch that fight all the time.
I watch, like every couple months I'll just like load it up and be like, oh yeah, this shit. Oh, we're gonna see it again in Reunion, and then hopefully, I mean, I think it'll probably be the same too, because based on what we saw from,
it's gonna look so good.
It's gonna be in 4K,
4K HD, 60 FPS.
But yeah, I mean, I guess to tie a bow on how I feel about the ending now, because now I feel it's complicated now, because I was very easily going to be like, you don't end a story like that. you just don't be like, oh yeah, they're here, don't worry, and just be like, oh well, how, and just don't worry about it, we're here, we're going to save the day when you need us most at the end, and oh yeah, we've also been like hanging out in a cave this whole time. You know, it's just I still don't like it, but I do like the idea that this would potentially lead to having these characters show up again later on in Rebirth and stuff. So like maybe, who knows? Maybe we run into the cave. You know, if the game's open world, we run into a cave and then we just see a bunch of suit and ties on the ground. You're like, huh.
Now, who might
That's
that
weird.
be?
Who's throwing a cocktail party in a cave? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still, it definitely, it left a bad taste in my mouth. And I mean, I kind of like with Dirge, it's like, all in all, like, I still, don't get me wrong, and I know I've been sort of very negative, I guess, on Before Crisis, kind of jabbing it all the while that we've been talking about it, but I still enjoy it for what it is. Like, I may have a lot of issues with it, but I still enjoyed it, and I love talking about it, and like there's so much, it's almost like watching a beat movie, right? In a way, like, where it's, I mean, and I know that sounds like harsh, it's kind of like watching The Room, right? Where it's like you could still enjoy it for what it is, but it's like there's obvious issues going on here, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't think that they intended for it to come across in any of this way, but you know, in terms of, you know, we've said it a couple of times even in this episode. Like, I think just the limitations that they had to do all this under, like, really, you know.
Oh yeah,
really comes through, and it's like, man, like, they really couldn't have like have a part 3 of the epilogue, maybe.
No.
Have a mid-credits scene, you know, before. Let's just have 20, you know, let's be like Lord of the Rings, you know, that came out recently. Well, actually, no, I guess Return of the King wouldn't have been out when this game was out, but, you know, I feel even weirder now knowing all this other information, but overall, just to give, like, I guess a basic, like, sort of general feelings of how I feel about the game overall, I think it's pretty good for what it is, being a Japanese flip phone game, and I think it's actually, it suffers from the problem of being, like, over ambitious for what it can do. And it has so much promise, and it makes me so excited, not only for Ever Crisis, excuse me, but possible, you know, these characters being reintegrated into Rebirth and whatever the third game's going to be. I feel the same way I felt about Dirge, where it's like, I mean, there were some good things in there.
I liked Dirge way better than this.
I mean, yeah, I guess from just like an entertainment value perspective, I guess I think I got more enjoyment per second out of Dirge than I did this. But that again, it's just another
weaker part of the
unfair. Yeah, it's an unfair judgment because the game is what it is, right? And it's like if they had a little bit more power in there and they had a little bit more space to put in just a little bit of extra stuff in there, like I feel like they're definitely I'm super curious to see what their Ever Crisis version is going to be, because because with this game we had the fortune of our protagonist being Shotgun, but it could have been one of many. Like Cisne we could have played a Cisne. Is Shotgun going to exist in Ever Crisis? Are any of these other ones? I mean, I'm sure they are going to exist. Are they going to have names? Are they eventually going to have? Are they going to become real boys and girls and have names? But I don't know. I would also love to see Shotgun just still be called Shotgun, and she'll always be Shotgun to me.
It'll be interesting to see what they do. My problem is, like, at least when I look at the new trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. We have, I guess, actually, before I get into that, I will do the same as you and I guess put my bow on this. It was okay.
Yeah.
It was okay. I'll never watch it again, but it was okay.
Nope.
I think it's easily, and you could have guessed this going in, but it's definitely the weakest of the compilation. However, there's a lot of this stuff I would love to see recontextualized in the future. But speaking of, like, all these new Turks and Verdot and all of this, it's like we have so many characters to deal with, and we have new circumstances we have to understand. Like, it's already we have to make room for Zack and Biggs, and that's a lot of character real estate.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of character real estate. And now they're thinking of bringing in. We think we might bring in Genesis and Angel and Minerva and all these Christ.
Cisne.
We cannot please. Anyway,
like if any of these characters come back, please.
Cisne, please. But like,
let it
we
be
can't.
her.
We can't make. Are you ready?
3, and I feel like that was sort of the issue. I mean, as much as I love the idea of like the Turks being like a big group of people, I think the Turks function a lot better as a sort of smaller group of like a smaller group of elites, right? Yeah. And especially, I mean, because when you think about it, the Turks are meant to sort of like replace, I guess, what like the first class soldiers were, because like when you think about it, you had a couple of the Turks before, and like I mean they were still there, but they only ever really had, as far as we know, like 3 first class soldiers ever at one time.
None of them worked out. Every first class soldier ended in disaster.
And they're like, so maybe we should have like guys that are like maybe not as powerful as say a Sephiroth or any of those guys.
Well,
but, they could still get shit done.
They were able to control Vincent. They weren't able to control Sephiroth. Like, say what you will. Like, again, Vincent got cucked by Hojo. They had him under control, man. They had him under control. The Turks are just easier to control than soldiers. And they're willing to experiment them on them too. Like, they fucked with Vincent. We know.
Yeah, I mean, I do. One thing I will say that I did enjoy, even though we should have gotten way more of it throughout this game, is that the Turks themselves sort of exploring their own sort of emotions in regards to what they do, right? And they're trying to sort of humanize the Turks in a way, like more than just being like, oh, you have Rito and Rude that are like, the Abbott and Costello.
But I'll say this, actually,
Shinra,
hold on, I take something back. This actually does kind of explain Sung's attitude in Remake, because he knows the long game, he knows the long play, right? He knows Verdot is out there, It kind of like, I mean, you think about that scene where Rude and Reno are feeling remorse, but Sung kind of has this sort of absolutist or fatalistic attitude about it. Ironically enough.
Of like, hey,
I'm not saying it's the most satisfying explanation, but what I am saying is it can explain his sort of attitude in Remake.
You know what? I just thought of something, because you know how we were talking about how Verdot and Sung are kind of, he's his mentor sort of thing.
Yeah.
And him, Sung becoming the living legacy of Verdot, maybe, and we're kind of how we feel a little bit weird about how, Verdot's alive. That's weird. Like that kind of is weird. Honestly, makes me a lot more understand the people that are scared about Zack being alive.
Yeah.
And what that means for Cloud, because when you take,
Yeah.
one of Cloud's best scenes of like the whole living legacy scene,
a character defining moment, quite literally.
Exactly. And now if Zack ends up being alive and then Cloud knows about that, what does that do to him, right?
Well,
it's not like...
I'll say this, and we talked about this in one of those last episodes. If you go back through Remake, literally like a shadow of a mention of Zack, and it triggers, it gives Cloud the Cloud headache, right?
Literally, His name's
mention,
only brought up once.
His name's only brought up once, but there are other things, right? Like
even the slight suggestion.
Like when
hey,
Barrett says, but that doesn't give him the headache, right? But when like Barrett says, or is Stamp too scared to bite the hand that feeds him, or is he a loyal little doggy? And then boom, he gets fucking hit
Zack
with
the
it.
puppy.
Yeah. Little things like that. Anytime someone says something that can remind Cloud of Zack, he gets the headache. So that would make me think that if Cloud were to ever see Zack with his own eyes, it would break him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so, and like I totally, so because I'm like, yeah, I want to say that's true, or that's what would happen, but I'm still, I don't know how the game's gonna go about.
Okay, but like if Aerith says the word
that.
Zack, okay, Aerith just says the word Zack, and he has his biggest spaz.
Well,
session
he's
the biggest spaz session in the game in the playground where she says Zack, he starts going fucking nuts. So it's like if just saying Zack drives him nuts, what is seeing him has to be an explosion. It has to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I just. I don't know. I don't want to go. I don't want to go too far into this because we will. There's a lot because I'm thinking of so much stuff right now.
Let's rein it in back to before.
I'm brainwaving, and we've gone on so many tangents in this episode.
You know what I think, Chris? It sounds to me like, based on the last 10 minutes of this conversation,
we kind of run out of things to say.
It sounds like we're done with
Crisis.
Before Crisis, and we're ready to theorize about Rebirth.
We're ready to close the book. Yeah, I mean, and kind of. Yeah, I think at this point, I'm glad that we did this. I'm glad that we experienced Before Crisis together and with you, listener. Hopefully, having us here along to
eased it.
ease the not the pain, because it wasn't a pain to go through. Like I enjoyed every time we did an episode of this, and I think this one might be one of our our longest running compilation stuff, right? Or at least it feels like it was.
It's close. It's close.
I don't think Dirge was as long, and I think maybe Crisis Core was maybe about maybe not as long, but
I think Crisis Core was shorter. Crisis Core was like 12.
Yeah, Crisis Core is actually way shorter. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I still enjoyed talking about it, but when you like now that we're on the opposite end of it and like looking back on it, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of not so great things about it, but it does have its own charm.
Definitely.
It's very Gumby, very Gumby-esque charm, and I think I seeing where they're gonna take it going forward, and maybe. Ever Crisis will change some stuff around, improve upon some things, maybe at least even give us a scene of like, Sung in the back of the truck or something with Verdot's body and being like, oh, okay, because like I even said before earlier in this episode that I thought that's where it was going. Like my expectation was that he was, he kills Verdot and Elfie, right? but then it's going to be like, oh no, but he didn't though, because he wouldn't really do it.
Yeah.
He just wants to put on a show for all the goons. They're like, oh yeah, he's dead, right? Yeah, throw him in the back, whatever. We won't check his pulse. Whatever. We believe you. We were there. We saw a bullet come out. We heard a gunshot. It's fine. But yeah, it's just I'm the most annoyed by that. There is no explanation in the game, and then you have to find it out by reading a book.
Yeah.
Like that. That's my biggest gripe with it. But all in all, there's a lot of quirky stuff. There's a lot of silly stuff. I still want to, just to think of a couple of highlights from this game for me personally. The rude love affair side episode where I wish we got more of that stuff too. I don't know. I wish this game didn't turn into like, hey, let's meet all of the, let's meet the OG FF7 cast.
It started taking itself too seriously at a certain point.
Yeah, it started a little, the experience felt too much on rails, and then it's just like, it felt very predictable after a certain point. But I think the first kind of third of the game is kind of where it shines most, where you have, Azul showing up and, the like we were saying, the rude chapter and like things like that. And I'm like, yeah, this is the stuff, like I wanted to learn more about the Turks. I wanted to see the Turks just kind of interacting with each other more, and I feel like it just became too much of like a, hey, my OC was also there for all this crazy stuff from the original game. It's, I don't know, it did feel a little strange. But when you think about it, in like that Crisis Core came after this and how much more focused that game is and the story is for that game, I'm like, okay, well, at least they sort of maybe recognize that they could have done better with that stuff in there and be like, okay, yeah, we can sort of iron this out a little bit more and focus the story a bit more on these newer characters and make you develop a connection with these characters, right. Which they, I feel loosely connected to Shotgun, I guess, because, even though she's meant to be sort of a plank of wood character, she, and I only say that because the fact that you can choose between several different other Turks to play as, and I would imagine that most of them probably, like, it's not like they have like line changes or anything, especially in a game like this. I think they probably say the same things, or they don't have like little affectations or whatever for each individual Turk or anything. But I think for what the game was, it's fine. It's totally fine. If I was to give this game a rating, I would give it like maybe a 4 out of 10.
I'll give it a 4.5.
Maybe a 5, maybe a 4. I think it would depend depending on what day you ask me. But yeah, it's very, it's great for what it does, but what it does do is not particularly like. They didn't go as hard as I feel like they could have gone in certain ways, and then it seems like they relied a little bit too much upon the stuff that we already knew. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and maybe that's remake, sort of rewiring my brain to be like, yeah, I wanted, seeing certain things from other perspectives are cool, but I want new stuff. Yeah. I don't need to just have familiar thing and be like, I remember that, I know what that is. Mm-hmm. Which I feel like a lot of things kind of do that, especially nowadays. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of disappointed, but I'm also happy that we did it.
Me too. And I look forward to seeing what kind of references this will get in the FF7
I am so sorry to all the people that were like us, expecting like, oh man, it's the big old climax, and then as soon as I'll never forget when I watched this the first time, and then I'm just like, oh no, we have to do a podcast about this. Like, there's nothing here. But hey, there was stuff here, and like I said, there are so many good things that that happened in this chapter and in the other chapters. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when you look at like little tiny pieces of this puzzle, you look at and you're like, oh, okay, that works. That's done really well. But when you look at the final completed product, you're just like,
yeah.
it's missing more pieces than it's
missing
not.
a little
You know
bit
what I
there,
mean?
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm done spinning my tires on Before Crisis. I'm ready to go back to bed where I used to once lay with Before Crisis, and it's halfway out of the state right now.
I mean, look, I echo a lot of the same sentiments as you. It's good to know that they went up from here and that things, for the most part, got better.
For all intents and purposes, this was the first compilation material, right?
Yep.
Am I wrong?
No, this was the first one. I think they were really just getting their feet wet and trying to see what they could do, what they can't do.
Yeah. So I will forgive a lot of the sort of sloppy storytelling stuff and them not really knowing necessarily, because maybe they didn't have a concrete. They're like, oh, we tell this Turk's perspective of certain events and stuff, but maybe didn't really go beyond that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just they didn't know what else to do, right?
Right.
So, I think it is nice that they did get better with each one, depending on what your opinions of Dirge are, I guess.
Makes sense. But all in all, I enjoyed it, but I'm glad it's over. And I won't be watching
no
it
more
again.
Anticipation. And we can 10 years from now we can look back and laugh and be like, remember Before Crisis? Yeah. Barely. I'm forgetting it right now as we are ending this episode. It is leaving my mind already. But I guess before we end the episode for realsies, we should we should have done this at the beginning of the episode.
Actually, okay. Let's cut. We'll cut at the end and then we'll put it in the beginning. And I'll cut.
Okay.
And I'll cut all this out too. So if you want,
cut all this out.
If you want to 3, 2, 1 back in, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. All right. So with that all being said, I'm ready. I'm ready for what's next. And you know what? What is next, Nick? What are we going to talk about next time?
Well, I'll tell you what the next episode will be. We're gonna, from here on out, we'll mostly be diving into our thoughts on Rebirth, maybe some theories, maybe some deep dives on some of the stuff we did before, some deep dives on the lore or hidden secrets scattered around OG that were only optional and you had to seek them out. But the next episode, we're actually going to talk about Sephiroth and Genova and how much of which side is in control. Because, it's been obvious this fan base is split. There are some who think Genova's calling the shots, some who think Sephiroth's calling the shots. I think it's symbiotic, but to what degree, I don't know.
We have discussed it.
We've discussed it
previously before.
Times, but what we'd like to do is flesh out all sides of the argument in an unbiased manner. State their cases, and then let you, the viewer, decide what you think.
Yeah, and we'd love to get your guys' input on stuff.
Yeah.
We want to generally have some more input from the audience, because we had such a fun time doing episode 100.
Right.
So we definitely want to
Yeah.
If you guys hey, you don't have to join the Discord. I mean, you totally could if you wanted to. But hey, you can send us an email. Hey.
Exactly.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Anytime. But you got anything left for?
No. I am limit braked. I am limit broke.
I've broken my limit as well. So, would you like to do the honors of counting us down?
Sure. I would love to. All right, 3, 2, 1.